Okay, so good morning. I'm Andy Credit from Birmingham Eagles Wheelchair Basketball and Birmingham Inclusion Sports Group. It gives me pleasure today to introduce Natasha Price for the Invincible Woman. Natasha, why have you got this incredible nickname of the Invincible Woman? Sorry.
Well, okay, so it actually came down to me setting up a business, and my business name ended up being called Invincible, which of course is a play on the word invincible. So from then on, people started knowing me as the Invincible Woman, partially because of my business, but also because I guess people know me as a person that doesn't give up easily, and you know, I've taken a few knocks in my time through, you know, one thing or another, and I just keep going, I guess.
Amazing. I mean, you know, I read your profile and I read your bio, and you know, I looked at, did some research into you. So, I mean, you know, it's an incredible story. I mean, you know, 99% blind, you know, paraplegic, you know, diabetes. I mean, that's, you know, I mean, tell me the story and what, you know, happened. How did it all kind of end up that way in circumstances?
It's yeah, it's a bit of a story. So I was actually in the UK at the time. I'm living in Australia now, but I was back in the UK staying with family, and it was Christmas Day 2008. I went to bed as normal and woke up the next morning completely blind in my right eye. Within a week, I'd lost the vision in my left eye, and to be honest, I could barely see the difference between night and day. There really was nothing there at all. As you can imagine, that was really hard, especially being so far away from my immediate family who are all still here in Australia. But I was very, very lucky to have some great people look after me in Hereford, which is where in the UK I was staying at the time. And I ended up in rehab for a little bit, but within a month I ended up paralysed from the waist down. I just started getting a little back pain one day, and a few weeks later I couldn't walk. I guess it took them. I ended up in the QE2 hospital there in Birmingham. Fantastic neurologist there, Dr. McCory, that looked after me. He was amazing, and eventually diagnosed me with an illness called neuromyelitis optica. So it's a little bit like MS, but much more aggressive in that you know, you tend to have your initial symptoms, and they all happen very, very quickly, and you can have relapses. In 2012, I think it was, I ended up paralyzed from the neck down for 7 months because of this illness. That they've since discovered that I don't have the exact markers for it, but that there's something very, very similar going on, but probably just very, very unique to me. So diagnosis has been a little bit difficult, but yeah, you know, I'm doing well. My vision is much better than it was. I'm still classified as low vision, but I'm not completely blind. So it's I think most people would struggle to be able to continue doing the things that I perhaps get away with sometimes with this level of vision. But because I was spent, you know, 6 years not being able to see a thing, what I live with now just seems incredible to me. So I've adapted to the situation really well. Wheelchair racing and low vision isn't always the easiest thing to do. I've had a few crashes thanks to it, and not seeing obstacles in my way. But you know, it comes with the job. I love it. I wouldn't change it for the world.
I mean, that is really fantastic. I mean, you know, it's amazing what you do. I mean, you've come back. You say you become this invincible woman. Now you push yourself to limits. You know, you've achieved. Became a lawyer. You was a professional dancer from 1997. You know, then you obviously these things happen, and you're still pushing your limits, and then you're speaking at the gala for the Commonwealth Games in the Gold Coast, and then, as you say, you're a baton bearer. Was a baton bearer at the Commonwealth Games in 2018, and then carry on to become a wheelchair racer, and 42 kilometers in the marathon. I mean, that's unreal. I mean, I've done half marathons. I push myself. I have a rare autoimmune condition, and I've got bilateral pars defect. And nerve root damage. So I'm waiting to see a spinal surgeon. But it's phenomenal. What amazing how people like yourself push themselves and carry on. What motivates you every day to do these things?
I guess for me, I spent almost 10 years in bed, not really being able to do much of anything. The pain was a lot for me to deal with. It still is, but I have better coping mechanisms nowadays. And also, I guess when you first find yourself in the situation where you've got such severe disability, people that can sometimes be the people that are looking out for you can kind of cotton coat you a little bit and wrap you up in cotton wool and kind of think about the small things like, your house needs to be adapted, or you need to find a job that'll suit, but they don't think about, well, actually, what are the realities of living that day-to-day life and finding goals and dreams and still working towards them. It took me a long time to figure out exactly what I wanted to do, but after 10 years in bed, for me, that's my motivator. That is, I have to make up for all that time that I feel I've lost. And I guess I don't want it to sound arrogant, but I like to feel like there's people who can see me and see what I'm doing and actually realize that post disability, there is so much that you can still achieve, and life can still be exactly what you want it to be. You just may have to adapt and go about it in a slightly different way to what you'd planned. That's all.
Fantastic. I mean, I read about you starting Invincible, and you talk about getting people with disabilities to have fun and fulfilling life. I mean, what does that? I mean, how does that work for your organisation? What's the goal, and how do you do that?
So we do it in a lot of different ways. We are developing products and starting to sell online soon to help people with long-term health conditions and disabilities to do things that will be easier for them so that they can work towards those goals. Unfortunately, I can't go into what the products are because we're still waiting on the patent to come through, but watch this space. As for the rest, we deliver workshops face-to-face and online. I suppose myself and my business partner, Adam, who's also my coach, we are using our lived experience to demonstrate and show exactly what it's like to live with disability, but also be the not only the realities but the fun side of it, and show and so that people relate to us. We use humor a lot. Humor is really, really important, and I also find that people with disabilities tend to possess that a lot, maybe sometimes in a very, very dark way, but it certainly seems to be a
I do agree with that. I think working with so many different people, and so I've done it now for about 20 years, and what I get with from wheelchair basketball and the people that I work with, it becomes a family orientated group. So they understand each other, and that humour really comes out, and that banter sort of flows all the time. So, and there's no way you can stop it, because it's just one of those things that you get used to.
Exactly right.
I mean, talking about motivation, inspiration. Who really inspired you after things sort of like went that way for you? How did you who supported you to get back that way?
My parents have been huge support for me. When I got sick, I moved back to Australia in order to be with them and have their support. My dad was a professional football player there in the UK, and he has always been extremely strong-willed and strong-minded, and I guess he's instilled a lot of that in me as well. So to kind of have his support and my mum's support, who's a very, very strong lady, they have inspired me to keep going and keep finding the strength and the mentality needed to just make the most of the situation, I guess.
Fantastic. Owen, I'm going to pass over to Owen, so hopefully Owen's got some questions to ask you. Owen, over to you.
Hi there. I was just wondering, do you have any, I'm sure you do, but could you outline any sort of inspirational stories that you found working with Invincible, and particularly maybe in terms of children or young people, and how they've become inspired by the work that they do and the work that you do with them?
I've been so blessed to work with some incredible kids. There's a young lady that who is also into wheelchair racing. She's 10 years old. Her name's Bridie Saul, and she just has a strength and tenacity that you often don't see in adults, let alone kids that age. She knows how to go out and chase her dreams despite all the challenges that she's often had thrown her direction. You know, like any child with a disability, I believe she's got a form of spina bifida. She's had her struggles, she's had lots of surgeries and you know, lots of things that have happened to her very, very recently, but you still see her going out and making the most of life and saying, do you know what, I'm going to adapt to this situation, I am going to make the best of it, and I am still going to do exactly what I want to do. She in January, I did a race in Sydney called Osday. It's one of the biggest races in the Southern Hemisphere. And she was the youngest child ever to compete in the race. We you know, there were Paralympians there. All of the competition was, you know, adults over the age of 18, and then there was her and one other young boy that were out in their races. And she got to the end of the course, and it is a tough course. So I was very, very impressed by her. And you see kids like that all the time in the racing community. I think sports just brings children together, and it's such a great it's a great leveler for people. I think everybody's the same at the end of the day. You may have different challenges, but sports just brings people together.
Fantastic. I was also just wondering, what can we do in schools, whether we be teachers, sports coaches, to really help and inspire people with disabilities within our setting? What are your key tips there?
I guess make sure that the way that you're inclusive is to actually allow these children the opportunity to do what anybody else is doing. I saw something the other day that really upset me. It's the way that they're being taught in certain schools in the US, where they were in a class being given a package where they had to decide in the story what should happen with a child that was in a wheelchair, and all the kids were having races, and the child in the wheelchair wasn't able to compete in the race because the teachers didn't think that he was capable of doing that. And they were saying that the way to be inclusive and include him was to allow him to hand out the medals at the end. Now that to me that breaks my heart, because there is no reason why any child could not compete in a race in some way. It may be in a different way to everybody else, but there is always a way around, and there is always a way of making this stuff work. I guess try to see things from the point of view of the child, not necessarily as the able-bodied adult looking at what the child can do. What does that child personally feel that they're capable of doing? And let them run with that. Let them chase their goals. Let them work towards whatever they feel inspired towards doing.
Fantastic. Some great tips. I'll take that with me next week when I'm in on Monday. I was just wondering what your views are on sport being truly inclusive, so people with disabilities or various conditions taking part in sport alongside and with able-bodied people, or compare that to disability sport and parasport as a sort of separate entity?
It's such a difficult question, that one, because I feel that different people have different needs, and I think that it's important to allow the option of truly inclusive sport to happen. I think that people with disabilities can offer a lot to a team that maybe able-bodied people can't. They often come with much more resilience and strength and characteristics that people with that haven't faced those kind of challenges haven't necessarily faced in their lives. So there's always that kind of aspect of things. However, at the same time, disability sports is fantastic in building that disabled community and allowing people to feel like they belong somewhere and can identify with the group of people that they're with. And that's not necessarily something that you feel when you're alongside people that are completely different to you. So it's very hard to know which way to go with that question. I see benefits in both, so I think it's very important that both sides are offered to people.
Thanks again. And my final question before I hand back to Andy is, how do you notice the difference between children's attitudes or adults' attitudes between people who've had a condition or a disability from birth and have never known anything different, and those people that have either been diagnosed or have suffered an accident or an illness later in life? What's the difference between how they react to sporting events or activity?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think people that have become disabled a little bit later on, or have developed a long-term condition later on, they either go one of two ways. They either really embrace it and think, do you know what, I've got to take on this challenge and I've got to find my new way of doing life. They become strong and stoic and are looking for a way forward. On the other hand, you can come across people that are very bitter and are really, really struggling with their new realities. And I think they can be stuck missing what they had before, instead of kind of looking forward and thinking, do you know what, this is my new life. I have to find a way of coping with it. I have to find a way of moving forward. Often with people that have been disabled their whole lives, they don't see themselves as any different to anybody else. It's what they've always known. It's part of them. It's intrinsic in them. And they go out and just do life the same way as anybody else, because they're the same as anybody else up there. You're the same. Your heart and your mind, your emotions, everything else is the same. So, yeah.
No, that's great, and that's a real insight, and that's something I'm personally and professionally interested in. So it's been great to have your views on that. Natasha Price, it's been great to speak to you. I'm going to go from asking questions to the Invincible woman to handing back to Birmingham's very own Spider-Man. So thank you, Andy.
Nice talking to you.
Okay. Thanks, Natasha. Thinking about resilience, and I know you're a very resilient woman, and I say the invincible woman. I mean, looking forward to obviously 2022, and we talk about Birmingham Commonwealth Games, and obviously you're constantly training for that. What's the next step then regarding the Commonwealth? Where are you now regards to Birmingham 2022?
Things have been very difficult, to be honest. The past 12 months, I had I broke my collarbone, and then shortly afterwards I got a head injury after running into a hurdle on the athletics track, and ended up with post-traumatic amnesia for 3 months, and I'm still missing that entire 3 months of my life. Because of that, I ended up missing a lot of big races and things that would have helped with qualification. I'm still working towards those goals, but also because of COVID and because no events are being run over here, and Queensland, where I live, our borders are completely closed, so we're not able to go anywhere. It's made it very, very difficult in order to actually get any kind of decent events in. I was supposed to be competing at the Australian National Championships the week that the borders closed. A week later, I was supposed to be there in Manchester doing the Manchester Marathon, and obviously both events for me weren't things that I was able to go ahead with. And who knows when anything's going to happen again. But I just guess for me, keeping myself as fit and healthy as possible, and looking out for what I can between now and then, hopefully something will come up and I can keep working towards my Com Games dreams. It's frustrating in that the few weeks before lockdown happened, my times had gotten very, very good, and I was exactly where I needed to be to get where I wanted. But you know, these things happen, and it is what it is, and everybody's in the same situation, so we've just got to work with it and hope for the best. And you know, I feel sorry for the athletes trying to qualify for the Paralympics at the moment, because especially here in Australia, you've got nowhere, because you know, we're a big island in the middle of the Pacific, and so far from anywhere, there's not really any options to find any kind of competition in order to get those qualifiers in. So tough times.
It is tough times. I mean, we, you know, recently had George Bates on and Annabelle Lindsay from Wheelchair Fast. We're talking about the classification, and obviously, you know, you look at that, and you know, things are moving forward, and obviously they're reviewing that, going back to the athletes putting a petition into the IPC. Going forward, then, regarding obviously your training. It is very difficult. I mean, what would you say to other athletes at the moment who are basically in the same situation as yourself? And obviously, they're trying to qualify for the Commonwealth Games. You've got the Paralympics next year. It sounds very hard to get all that kind of training and trying to really think about how you move forward. What would you say? What would the message be?
Stay the path. Decide what your goals are. Work backwards. Work out your time frame, and know what you need to do in order to get there. Yes, it's going to be hard, and yes, you may have to find different ways of going about it. Maybe do some virtual races, or you know, whatever you can find that can keep you motivated and keep you on track towards your different time frame and your different goals. You'll get there. You just have to remain strong in the mind. That's all it comes down to at the end of the day, is keeping positive, and that's not an easy thing to do. It's not, when you've spent your whole time so focused on one thing, and your routine's been messed up, and you're so uncertain about so many things. It makes it very, very difficult, but that's the only thing that will get you through, is just staying strong in mind.
Fantastic. I mean, yeah. Before we finish, we always finish with two questions regarding to lockdown and motivation, inspiration. Looking at medical staff and key workers, and obviously you're talking about people that are isolated, and you know, as you said, we said earlier, you know, people with disability have been isolated most of the time anyway, and you know, thinking about lockdown and thinking about what's going over in Queensland, and you know, Birmingham itself has just had new restrictions put in because of cases rising. You know, what would your message be to the key workers, medical staff, people at home who are struggling? How would you support them with a motivational and inspirational message?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. Well, first of all, to the key workers and the people that are supporting everyone, thank you. Without their hard work, there's just, you know, there would be no moving forward. There would be, the whole situation would be so much worse than it is now. We're blessed to have people like that around that are doing such incredible work. And I guess to the people with disabilities or that you know, that are shielding and feel isolated, don't forget to reach out to the people that you consider your support. You know, a Zoom call, a phone call, anything like that. Facebook Messenger, you know, a video call, whatever you feel you need to do to keep yourself sane and to have that that contact and that connection. It's all about connection.
Fantastic. And finally, we always talk about quotes, and if you could think of a quote to support motivational and inspiration, what would your quote be and why?
Embrace your challenges and move forward. It's something I live by. Just because, you know, every single person on earth has a challenge. Everybody has their own personal thing that they're struggling with. But if you learn to embrace it, take it on, take strength from it, and learn that it's actually making you a resilient, stronger person, and then find a way of moving past and saying, okay, it's there, but I'm going to do stuff anyway, life becomes a lot better and it becomes a lot easier to deal with the stuff you have going on.
Thank you. We early in the year we did something called the At Home Superheroes, which is sponsored by or founded by Sophia Warner, Paralympian. And we did, obviously Owen's on about, they call me the Birmingham Spider-Man because I dress up as Spider-Man and go and do some walking or get in my all-terrain wheelchair and I go and do 20 kilometres here and there.
Love it.
We actually, as a team, we completed over 2,000 kilometres in a month. Wow. And we've been invited for the at-home Winter Wonder Wheels in November, which is a month long, and we'd like to start inviting our interviewees to take part with us. So if you're not training and if you'd like to do some virtual training, we're more than happy to invite you to be part of our Winter Wonder Wheels team. So Natasha, I would invite. You know, it'd be great to be part of our team for the Winter Wonder Wheels, and hopefully we can do some kilometres together. Natasha,
sounds good to me. I'm for that.
Natasha Price, the Invincible Woman, a pleasure to talk to you. Hopefully we'll connect and start doing some training together, and hopefully we'll see you in Birmingham in 2022 for the Commonwealth Games. You take care.
Thank you.
All right.
You too.
All right. Bye bye, Natasha. Bye, Owen.
Bye.